Okay, welcome to the session today. Until yesterday, we have looked into speculate phase, right? Now we are going to get into that phase and discuss about the various concepts within that. We have already discussed about model, but still we are going to again discuss that. We are going to discuss about persona, what do you mean by extreme persona and things like that. We'll look into the business use case. These three are the techniques used in requirements gathering. And you know what is a requirements gathering, right? During the inception phase, which is prior to your development sprints, or iterations, high level functional requirements will be gathered to provide requirements outlining what the system is being built for and what functionality is being delivered. This process is meant to give the development team a starting point, right? And then we'll move on to discuss about how to identify the potential features. We are going to specify the categories by functional grouping, by probably business value, priorities, and we also associate risk, right? High value, high risk will always be on the top of the product backlog. It is ranked in a single continuous sequence. We'll understand that. We'll deep dive on the organizing features. And then we are going to account for risks. Additional consideration may be taken for the risk associated with certain features. Some features will involve design. Some features are going to involve architecture, framework, algorithms, right? That are new to the team. Anything that is new to a team is classified as risky. Some features don't have much value, but ignoring it will impact the goal. Though a few features do not have maximum value, it might impact the goal, overall goal. Hence, such features often bump their priorities to high. Let us understand all that. Here we go. First thing is prioritize the features using one of these techniques. First thing is priorities. Simple priorities. You assign a priority number. 1, 2, 3, things like that. There's no big deal in that. All right. The next thing is you can also classify as high priority, medium priority, or low priority. There is another feature which is called as Moscow. Right? And then we have Kano model, monopoly money, relative weighing. Right? We'll discuss all these. We are going to do a deep dive now as we move forward. We also collaborate with the customer on user stories. We estimate the story point using relative weighing technique or planning poker techniques, right? You can do a wideband Delphi to do that. All these are the various techniques. We will do a deep dive now, so just hold on. First, let us discuss about the requirement gathering techniques. There are majorly 3 requirements gathering techniques. One is model, another thing is persona, and the third thing is business use case. What is agile modeling? Modeling is nothing but creating a prototype, a small instance of a working software or the working product which can be tested, right? You build a small model or prototype, you give it to the customer, you ask him, hey customer, is this the thing that you're expecting from my end? If the customer says yes, then you proceed to build on top of that. There are 2 things which might happen, right? One is if you have a prototype, right, you build on top of that. If the customer says it is okay, or you throw it away and start something afresh. For example, constructing a house, right? That's a small prototype. You cannot build on top of that, right? So you throw it off and start building the actual construction work. If the customer agrees, all right, that is your agile modeling basically. It gives users a glimpse of what they might expect. Most requirements are likely to emerge when users see the prototype. Once they see the prototype, sometimes people, even if the customers are not clear with the requirements, if you build a prototype, they might say that, yes, this is the requirement, and can you also add more things to the software, right? So they get some kind of a clarity on what is required when you show them a prototype if the customer doesn't know what he wants. This technique aims to get users to express the requirements. You are creating a model or a prototype to ensure that people get a feel of how the actual product would look like. Once they get the feel on how the actual product is going to look like, right, they can easily recommend newer requirements. They can express different requirements. They might say that, hey, do away with the initial requirements. Here are the new requirements. So it's a good technique, to get the thought process rolling. And it is a rapid way of getting the feedback. Ideally, in waterfall models, when do you get the feedback from the customers? At the end of the release or at the end of the project. However, if you employ this modeling or prototype technique early in your project, you can get a quick feedback. And customer would not be unhappy when he sees the final product or the, service or software, whatever you're planning to accomplish. That is agile modeling. What is a prototype? Which helps the customer understand the current design state. For example, the blueprint of your house, right? Your architecture diagram, if you're dealing with servers and things like that. There are three common types of prototyping. One is your HTML. You can use that and quickly come up with an overview of how the structure or design is going to look like. Or it can be a simple, this is the HTML, right? This is a simple HTML. Or it can be a paper sketch like this. You can draw on a piece of paper, show it to the customer, and ask him or her on whether this is the website which he or she is expecting. This is another quick, dirty way of, getting clarifications on the requirements from the customer prototype. And the third thing is your wireframe. Now, what is this wireframe? It's a visual form of prototype. It's a form of prototype only, which is visual in form. It is used to substantiate the architecture design and interfacing requirements along with the visual representation. So it looks something like this. For a website prototyping, right? Wireframe. You can think about this also as an architecture diagram or as a blueprint, right? If you're constructing a new house, you call in your civil engineer and he's going to document or show you a view like this for your house. He might say that your house is going to have so many windows, so many doors, elevation is going to look like this and things like that. That is nothing but a wireframe. It's a visual form of prototype. That's it. All right. Next comes personas. Personas is also good in order to identify the requirements. Who is a persona? Persona is an imaginary person. Persona is an imaginary person, right? Or it's an identity created to model the interactions with the system. For example, if I'm coming up with ICICI Bank portal, for example, or if I want to launch a new ICICI branch here in my location. So if I were to gather the requirements for launching the new branch here, then this is what I'll be looking at. I'll first identify the kind of people who might visit my branch. I would say that people who are minors meaning less than 18 years might want to open a bank account, right? So I will identify one person now, which is, people with less than 18 years. They might walk into my branch to open a bank account. People who are greater than, say, 22 years and less than 50 years. These are the people who typically are working. They also come to open the bank account. There are people who are greater than 50 or people who are retired. So say 59, 60, right? 59 plus. So also these retired folks can come to my branch and open the bank account. We use personas to come up with the user stories. So this is what I would say. I, as a minor whose age is less than 18 years, want to open the bank account so that I might accumulate amount which is given as part of my pocket money. That is one person, all right. Greater than 22, less than 50, right? So I might say that I am a person aged between this 22 to 80, right? I, who is aged between 22 to 50, want to deposit the amount to my friend who is overseas because I have borrowed the amount from him. That can be another user story based on this persona. For this 39 plus, I, who is 39 plus years experience, right, is a retired professional who wants to open the bank account to deposit the pension amount. Why am I using personas? Because that is going to give me some indication on what are the various user stories which I have to create. What are the different user stories which I have to create, right? So that is persona, imaginary person or identity, right? Personas describe different types of customers to bring the idea to life. So it'll be very easy for you all to write your user stories if you can come up with personas. But there is also another thing which is called as extreme persona, which we're going to discuss now. These are all persona examples. You can go through that. Extreme persona. So I've told that there is one persona which says greater than 59 years experience, and we are plotting that, or we are providing this persona. But if I want extreme persona, I would say I'm an old woman greater than 70 years, right, who gets pension of my expired husband, right, and I want to deposit this amount in the bank account so that I might spend for my health expenses. So what are you doing here? You're just exaggerating. You could have as well told it's greater than 59 years experience, right? But what are you doing? You're exaggerating based on gender. You're saying you're a woman, you're a man, right? Or you might say that you're a handicapped person, physically challenged, right? So for a physically challenged person, you might be having different requirements on why you want to open the bank account and things like that, or why you want to visit a branch in the first place. So persona is an imaginary person who is used to capture the user stories. Extreme persona is an exaggeration. For example, in persona, we have discussed also about people who are less than 18 years experience as minor, right? You can probably create an extreme persona which says, I am a newborn baby who wants to open an account, so that you start saving early. Maybe, right? That is an extreme persona. That is the difference between persona and extreme persona, by the way. Then you have use cases. A use case is nothing but a list of steps typically defining interactions between actor and a system to achieve a goal. So you can think about this in this way. Hey, there is a person who generates a lot of data. He generates a lot of data. All these data are put in a data warehouse system. From there it goes to the data mart. From there, data stage, and from there you start reporting the data to the various stakeholders. Stakeholders who get that give a printout, right? They give a printout of this particular report. If I have such a simple use case, I can start identifying the requirements within that. Hey, a person generates various data. What is the format of the data? These source data files should be put in a data warehouse. So what data warehouse software are we going to use? How are we going to connect? From there, how are you going to come up with the data mart? What kind of reports do you want to generate? That is going to give you another requirement. And I need to print this report. So there has to be a connectivity between my system and my printer. That is another requirement. So just by displaying this use case, you will be in a position to identify a lot of requirements. That is all about use cases. It will help you identify the requirements. It will help you get some clarification from the end users or customers. And it will help you organize your requirements, basically. So it will help you identify, clarify, and organize the requirements. And you can use these use cases in planning your system requirements, or in your design phase, or during your coding phase, or during your testing phase, right? You can use cases in all of those phases. That is the good part. Here is an example of a typical use case. See, if it is an ATM system, an operator is going to start the system on shutdown. That is how he interacts. Customer starts a session, either he withdraws, deposits, transfers, or inquires on his balance and things like that. He can also probably type an invalid PIN, then it goes to the bank, things like that. So this is the typical use case, right? This is how it's going to look like. Or it can also be in this format. Instead of an image, you can be given a table in this way. What is a raw product backlog? What is a raw product backlog? Product backlog which is not prioritized. That is in its raw format. That is called as raw product backlog. Right, here is my product backlog. Here are the various user stories. And you know that the user stories towards the end would be called as epics, the bigger user stories, which would get decomposed or broken down further as on how these epics emerge in the product backlog. And here are the list of requirements. And we have discussed about the prioritization techniques. Let us do a deep dive in all of these things. This is a typical thing, right? Survey which was conducted. How many features do we use? Often and always, it's 20% of the features that we use. 45% of the features are the features which we never use. We never use 45% of the features. Be it mobile phone, or be it your computer, be it your maybe car, or it can be a bike and things like that. Any product. All right. So we need to focus on the most used features, right? Often used features, and we need to prioritize that. These features we need to accomplish first, followed by always, AL. Sorry about the spelling, right? And then sometimes, and then rarely, and still if you find time, you should go with never used features, right? That is order that you have to follow always. So how can you prioritize the requirements or user stories? A simple priority, right? You just label priority 1, 2, 3, 4, and things like that. There is a problem by, if you are going to use this straightforward technique, right? Which is priority 1, 2, 3, there is a problem associated with that. People might, mark all the requirements as priority 1, right? Or too many things are rated as priority 1. It is rare that a business representative asks for a new feature and says it should be priority 2 or 3. That rarely happens, right? So this is a problem with this priority 1, 2, 3. If you give those numbers, right, these are the problems that you might encounter. Everyone might say, hey, everything is priority 1. That might be the challenge. Or you can prioritize using high, medium, and low. High, medium, low prioritizations fall victim to the same fate. Same thing. Everyone might say, hey, this requirement is of highest importance for me. Right? So these are the challenges that you might face with that. Here is a third example, which is called as monopoly money. You pick up imaginary cost, imaginary price, imaginary rupees, and then there will be requirements, user stories 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll say, hey, I'll give you $10,000. For $10,000, assume that each, or how much do you intend to spend on each of the requirements? I might say, hey, I want to spend $8,000 on this third requirement. What does that mean? You're giving more emphasis to requirement 3. You're prioritizing it in a way. If I give you money, fake money, and ask you to purchase the requirements, you might purchase this requirement by spending $8,000. That means this requirement 3 has a huge demand, and you prioritize that accordingly. You take this to the top position. That is monopoly money, right? You take up an imaginary amount and you start assigning to the features. The feature which gets the maximum amount, right? That is the one which you try to pick up. Anyways, the next thing is Moscow, capital of Russia, right? But there's a good feature in DSDM also. Moscow. M stands for must have. Sorry. S stands for should have. C stands for could have, and W stands for would like to have or won't have this time. If you think about a car, you obviously want cars to be locked. You want a key. You want the doors to open and close. These are all the must-have features. Without that, you want a horn. These are all must-have features. If these must-have features are not delivered, then your product itself is not complete. Then your product itself is not complete if the must-have features are not delivered. These are the features without which your customer is not going to accept the product. Mandatory features, must have. Then comes should have. You want AC, you want music system, right? And things like that. Those are your should have features. If you do not have that, you will be dissatisfied, no doubt about that. However, we can still manage. We can still manage if there is no music system in your car. You can still manage that. I'll be dissatisfied, but still manageable, right? And then we have could have features. For example, your exciters. If it rains, automatically my wipers should turn on. Could have. Good to have. Right? So these could have features, if they are not provided, customer is not unhappy. Customer will not be unhappy if these features, right, are not delivered to him. But if you deliver, he'll be definitely happy, he or she. And the last thing is, I would like to have this, but I don't like to have this at this point of time. Probably in the next release or the next iteration, I'll probably look into that. And this is how you prioritize your must-have features. All right. Even if you take example of your internet banking, right? You should be able to log in, right? You should be able to view your balance. You should be able to transfer the funds online. Those are all your must-have features. You want them. After every transaction, I want an SMS to be sent to my mobile, right? That is a should-have feature. You're expecting that, but if that is not possible, if people do not accomplish that feature, still you're going to accept, but with dissatisfaction. Could have feature. If I can create another login for my wife for the same account, and can I allocate some fund from my balance to my wife's account or same account which I'm going to extend, right? That is your could have feature in the future. Won't have feature. Probably you'll say that if I'm giving a sub login, create a sub login for my wife, I need an SMS to be sent to my mobile, that is one-time password. Otherwise, you know what will happen, right? Your wife is going to purchase everything and you'll go bankrupt. So probably that is your would have feature. Though my wife is making a transaction using the sub account, I want the message to come to my mobile, OTP, one-time password. All right. And then we have these things, right? The same things are mentioned here. Kano analysis. Kano analysis is close to Moscow only. It was developed in 1980s, right, by that person, Professor Noriaki Kano. Against his name, they have named this as Kano analysis. This technique identifies customer preferences and classifies into 4 categories. Delight us or excite us. It is going to deliver unexpected benefit, novel, new benefits, which are very high in value to the end users. Those are your exciters. Some new feature which is going to extremely delight your customers or end users. Satisfiers, the more the better, right? The more satisfiers you provide, the more better it is, or the better it is, right? If you reduce that, the value also is going to get reduced of the end product. So satisfiers are important. Dissatisfiers are must-have features. If you do not give me this feature, I'm not going to accept that. Must have, I want it at all costs. You can think about this as must have, think about satisfiers as probably should have, delight us as could have, and indifferent. These features, right, do not have any impact on customer. Either you give these features to me or do not give these features to me, I'm least bothered. That is not going to impact my satisfaction level. These probably you can say that would fall into won't have features. There's an example of Kano model here. This XLR wants to come up and prepare this small music car, right? Say this is your boss. Let me show your boss there. He's your boss, right? Your boss wants you to find out what the customer thinks about these core features of this car, music car. You know how to do that. What are you going to do? You're going to run a quick survey, right? And you ask the people and gather the requirements, gather the data on what people feel are these requirements, right? Few people might say very low fuel consumption. Yeah, this is a should have feature. Doors open clear cut is a must have feature. Massage seats both for passenger and driver are my could have features. Cigarette lighter is maybe should have feature, and this is the should have feature. So people are going to take the survey and they're going to list down what each of these features mean for them. Based on this also you can prioritize your requirements, your user stories, right? That is the important part. Either do a survey or in a different way try to find out things. So you survey and find out things, your job is done there. So say you have done that survey and you want to put it on Kano table here, graph. These are your, this scale speaks about customer dissatisfied versus customer satisfied features. Need not be fulfilled. That means you're saying these features need not be fulfilled now. But at the other side, you're saying that these features should be fulfilled. All right. For example, low fuel consumption is a satisfier. Low fuel consumption, probably it is a satisfier. Doors don't open clear cut. That is going to be your dissatisfier. You'll be dissatisfied if the doors do not open clear cut. So in this way, you can classify all of these different user stories on this kind of a graph, which is called as Kano analysis. Must have features, exciters. You need to also look into the time and all that. All right, relative weighing, we have already looked into that. It is a technique used for prioritization of features or stories. We have taken that example. I have a grape. I'm assigning a 1 for that story point. In relation to this, how difficult is apple? And you have told me that apple, you take or you provide a story point of 5 here. And then you have coconut, bigger one. You say, hey, I'm going to assign probably complexity of 11. That is relative weighing. It considers both the positive benefit and the negative impact. That's a good part. If I include the feature, what are the benefits, positive benefits? If I do not include, do we have any negative benefits on that, or negative impact? Not benefits, negative impact. Right? For this, you definitely require an expert judgment approach. Team is going to assess each feature being considered for the next release. Of course, this discussion would be led by a product owner to come up with your relative weighing. This is also a method technique for prioritizing the product backlog. It also gives team a focus on high business value. Rarely team can focus on the high business value. And it's the responsibility of the product owner. Right? Relative weighing is the responsibility of product owner. However, he is expected to take help from the team. And then you have this importance of prioritization. Why do you need to prioritize in the first place? Because you want to do right things. You want to delight your customers. You want people to accept your product and thereby ensure that your project is a success. And you also want to ensure better return on investment for the amount that you are investing. Right? So here is collaborate with customer, right? We need to understand all these things. Value-based decomposition, estimate story point using one of these techniques. Wideband Delphi, planning poker, and affinity diagram. Let us discuss all these three for now. What is decomposition? Breaking down your epics into smaller, more manageable features, and then to user stories until it is defined in sufficient detail. The same technique is being used to convert the user stories into tasks. Look at that. First, you have an epic. You break it down into a feature. From there, you break it down into user story. From there, you break it down into task. Decompose in this way. Epic, feature, user story, and tasks. That is how you're going to decompose things there. There is also something called as value-based decomposition. Value is the primary driving factor while using decomposition technique in agile projects. Unlike your traditional projects, right? You do not directly and blindly decompose your products. There has to be some logic behind decomposing your requirements. As per the Agile Manifesto, high value project items are delivered first. That is value-based decomposition. We also prioritize items based on value prioritization algorithm techniques. Irrelevant for us. You need not know these algorithms and all that. Just understand that we are prioritizing the requirements in a product backlog based on the business value it's going to bring to the table. Then comes wideband Delphi technique. Did you guys hear about Delphi technique in your PMP? Have you heard about Delphi technique in your PMP?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You have heard about that. There is a small variant called wideband Delphi. In Delphi technique, if there are three people, say three experts, no one will come to know on who has worked, who has provided the insights. However, in wideband Delphi, there's a small variant, right? You call everyone to a single meeting first. You explain about your requirement and let everyone go away. You'll not disturb them. You call them, explain, and let them go away. After that, you're going to approach each and every person individually, anonymously, and try to gather the requirements. Same thing happens again. Person A is going to give you his findings, person B her findings, and person C his findings. Person A's detail you take and give it to person B, person B's to person A, and person C information to person A for review and further refinement, without anyone coming to know on who has worked on a specific feature, right? After that, you once again at the end call everyone to another meeting. So you first call them for a meeting, then you follow your regular Delphi technique, then you call everyone to the meeting again. And here you discuss everyone's findings there, everyone's report. If there is any further clarification, you do that. That is what you do for estimating your effort or user story points. All right. Okay, so you just discuss on how to come up with estimations and all that. Team is given form or cards and brought together to discuss the user stories first. And during the meeting, estimates or the level of effort are not discussed. After the meeting and discussion, individuals depart and prepare their estimates independently. And once they are done, they come back to you, right? Team uses story points measure in estimation. Next, the moderator gathers all the requirements and plot them on the graph. After plotting them on the graph, team discusses the range. Say one person is saying, hey, this particular user story is of 1 story point. Another person say he's telling 20 story point. If there is such a huge difference, then you're going to debate and discuss on that. Probably not everyone is clear with the user story. So you're going to discuss, debate, right, and come to a common conclusion, consensus driven. Everyone together is going to come up with a common conclusion. That is called as consensus. It gets repeated until team reaches a consensus. Means team reaches a common conclusion. And then we have your planning poker. This is the most widely used technique of agile projects. It is an estimation technique which is used to achieve consensus on work estimates, right? But if you have greater than 10 estimators, planning poker might not work well. If you have a team of 10 estimators or less than that, your planning poker is going to do wonders there. A facilitator does this technique. There would be a facilitator, right? And the disagreements in estimations among the team members can be resolved by reaching consensus with examples. All this is, probably I would say it's self-explanatory, but let me explain in this way. What you do in planning poker is you give each person set of cards to person A, person B, and person C. You give each person set of planning poker cards. And on that planning poker, this is how it's going to look like. Let me show you that. Where is the diagram gone? 1 second. All right. So these are the cards, right? Typically, each person would be given this set of cards. You show or display a user story. You're going to display a user story and you ask your team members, guys, what do you think is the point that you're going to assign, story point you're going to assign to this user story? You explain about the user story, clarifications are cleared. Now you say this. No one has to show their estimates to the people sitting beside them or anyone in the room for that case. So you hide that planning poker card first. You hide it. And you as a facilitator would say 1, 2, 3, go. Everyone should raise a card which they feel is apt at one go. Everyone at one go. So say for a particular user story 1, right? Assume there are, say, 5 people. Out of 5, 3 people say it is of complexity 3, or you assign 3 story points. But one person says, I'm going to assign half story point to this requirement. Say the 5th person says, all right, I'm going to assign 40. Now there is a huge mismatch of half here and 40 here. Two extreme values, minimum value and the maximum value. Two extreme values. If you have these kind of extreme values, you pick up this person 1 and person 5 and ask them for clarifications. You ask, hey, why did you give such a minimum point of half? What was your thought process when you looked into this user story? And you ask the same thing to this person 5 who has given a maximum number of 40. Probably their understanding is wrong. So when they speak up, you would be given an opportunity, right, to clarify those requirements, clarify those what do you call misunderstanding. After the clarification, you once again go through this entire process. You'll say once again 1, 2, 3, go. Everyone should show their cards at one go. Probably now everyone would say 3. Hence, you achieve the consensus, right? However, not everyone is going to give me the same number always, right? So this is how it goes. If, say round 1 discussion happened, one person told 1, another person told 4 or 10. So you asked Rahul to explain on why it is 1, and you have asked Manas to explain on why it is 10. They both explain, provide their explanations. After that, you have round 2. 1, 2, 3, go. Everyone is going to show these cards. 3 out of the 4 people are going to show one number, and this person is going to show another number. So there is no consensus here. Everyone has not agreed on a single number. In such cases, you can go with the PERT estimation. Optimistic is a person who provides you the least number. Pessimistic is a person who gives you the maximum number. And in between, whatever you have, that is called as most likely. Simply use this formula of PERT to arrive at a common story point for a user story. And the next thing is affinity diagram and estimating. Affinity, by the definition of that, is called as friendship, closeness, togetherness, right? Suppose you're planning to invite your people for your wedding. Suppose you're getting married again because you're not satisfied with your dissatisfaction. You want to be more dissatisfied. So say you're planning to get married again. What do? You write down the invitations, right? Say these are the list of people whom you want to invite, right? You make a list of that, and you will say that, hey, these 3 people here are my school friends. You might say these 4 people here are my present wife and in-laws. I do not want to invite them. These 2 are my office colleagues. I'll invite them. I'll send a personalized invitation. These 3 are my relatives. What am I doing here? I'm grouping related things together. That is called as affinity diagram. Here there are 2 things. Qualitative relative sizing. Qualitative means I'll say smallest. Smallest for you might not be smallest for me. Probably larger for you is medium for me. So there is a subjectivity involved, right? In qualitative relative sizing, always there is a subjectivity involved. So you'll say that story A is questionable. I need a lot of clarification on that. Story 3, user story 3 is smallest. User story B is questionable. User story D is medium size. User story F is smallest. G is larger and E is largest. Things like that. You can also do quantitative relative sizing. Instead of qualitative relative sizing, you can do quantitative relative sizing. Here, you define the definition of small, medium, large, XL, and double XL. Right? There will be some number. Small means 40 probably, or 38. Medium means 40, large means 42. Things like that for your shirt size. Right? That would be quantitative in nature. And you assign the user stories there. This is called as silent relative sizing. Silently everyone does that. And next thing is editing the wall. You go place everything on the wall, you change. Right? This is called a silent relative sizing. Everyone does that independently. Then everyone comes to the wall and you ask them to, hey, stick your user stories against the corresponding values there. So people will come up and say that, okay, let me paste story F and story E on double XL. Story A, let me put it on XL column, things like that. However, while you do that right, ensure that you place items into relative sizing buckets. Relative, right? If story D is large, then relative to this large, do you think story 3 is easier than large? If it's easier, probably you'll put it on medium or small. If relative to story large, if you have story E, which is more complex in comparison to story D, then you would put it on the right side, which is story E here. Then you have the product owner challenge. You probably want, or your product owner might challenge you, right? He might say, hey guys, whatever you have done is good, but I feel that, story G is not medium. I strongly believe that it has to be extra large. Why do you think so? And then product owner will come up with his own explanation on why this particular story G is XL and not medium. So this is the last step which happens. Another step to follow is get it into electronic tool if you wish to, or you can maintain it on the whiteboard itself or on your walls basically. All right. All this while we have been discussing about value-based product backlog prioritization. Now we just discuss about the risk-based prioritization. Please do not worry about these numbers here because I think these numbers are wrong. We need to revamp the slide. Focus on this. High value, high risk, always on the top. Yesterday or day before, I do not remember, I've asked you this question. Towards the end of the product backlog, what do you see? You see low value, high risk at the bottom. High value, high risk will be on the top. From exam perspective, remember that. They'll ask in exam, right? What will be on the bottom of the product backlog? You have to say low value, high risk. High value, high risk will always be on the top. Remember that. Okay. So do not worry about these calculations. Those seem to be wrong. We'll revamp that. But you prioritize a product backlog based on not just value, but also based on risk. That is the rationale there. right? So you prioritize your product backlog based on not just value but also risk. And now it is called as risk adjusted product backlog, which will be grooming over the period of time. When I say grooming, it changes. You groom, right? From kid, you groom to a student, to a young person, right? From there, you groom to become a man. All right. So product backlog also grooms to evolve over a period of time. Yeah, this is how it will get evolved basically, right? And remember this, you also have a release planning. During the release planning, team is going to review the strategies and vision which is shared by your product owner or customer. And the team is going to decide on how to map things, how to map the work from the prioritized backlog into the iterations. This vision and strategy will help team to pick up the right user stories, thereby providing the right value to the customer. Okay. The release plan is then divided into iterations. We know that, right? There would be a product here. You'll have a product roadmap with the start and end date of all releases. Then you'll have releases. Within each release, you're going to have iterations. Iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, things like that. So your release plan is always broken down into multiple iterations. Your release plan is going to include all these assumptions, dependencies, constraints. Think about this as your project scope statement. Right? It will have all assumptions, dependencies, constraints, decisions which you have made, concerns, risks, and all the other issues. Then comes this thing which is called as last responsible moment decision points. This means that in agile projects, you do not jump in and take decisions immediately. You wait until the last responsible moment, right? And you take decision at that moment, you know. And when do you take that decision? When you get into a situation wherein if you do not take a decision, you cannot move forward. You wait until that situation and then take decisions, right? If I do not take a decision, my work will be halted. I cannot move forward. If that is the case, then you take a decision. That is called as last responsible moment. The moment at which failing to make a decision eliminates an important alternative. Here is an example, right? One team knew it would have to make a decision between going with Sybase database or an Oracle database. Team did not have to decide this because they had not started the work. Now they have realized that it could develop code related to this in the third iteration, right? Therefore, what is the last responsible moment? We know that we need to take a call in the third iteration. Probably at the end of the second iteration, that would be termed as last responsible moment. And probably at that point of time, I'm going to take a call on whether we have to go with Sybase or Oracle. And your release depends on the following factors. Deadline from competitor, right? Apple versus Samsung. Samsung is going to say Apple, said that, hey, let us take 1 year to come up with the most robust application or operating system. But your Samsung is due to release something good in the month of October, for example. This is going to change your release. You would tell to Apple that, sir, in October, Samsung would come up with this release. What if they come up with the same features that we are thinking about? So let us launch it probably in August, right, to beat the competition. So deadline from competitor is important for your release planning. It has to support the contract also, which you have written. If you're signing a contract for 1 year, it has to support that. You cannot say that I'm going to release a product after 2 years. Your contract is only for 1 year, right? So based on that, it has to meet the predetermined schedule. If your customer says that, do you know what, I want to launch this product in the market by August end, then there will be a predetermined schedule there. Supporting a final deadline. Customer says, this is the deadline for me, and you try to meet that. Release can also be done when you feel that there is enough value. See, initially you might have thought that I'm going to release minimum marketable feature in the month of April. But in the month of March itself, you felt that there is sufficient value now. I can release this in the market. If you feel so, you can release that in the market, right? In March itself, rather than wait till April. So when you feel that there is enough value, you tend to release that in the market, right? Or you might feel that, this is the ideal time for me to do testing. That also can call end of your release. Discovering the duration of release. How do you do that? Say you have these items there. Say you have plum fruit, right? You want 12 plum fruits, 6 banana, 6 apple, right? 3 mangoes, and say you want one cantaloupe, two cantaloupes, right? SP stands for story points. Say you pick up and say that, hey, I give one story point for plum fruit, one story point for banana, 2 story points for apple, 4 for mango, and 8 for cantaloupe. How many do I need? 12. This fruit, right? 12 into 1 story point will give me 12 story points. 6 banana into 1 story point each will give me 6 story points total. I want 6 apple. Each apple is worth 2 story points. The total is 12 story points. I want 3 mangoes, 4 story points. Total is 12. I want this fruit, not sure whether it's cantaloupe or not, into 8 story points, 16. If I sum this entire thing, total story points of all the user stories, I would get a grand total story point, which is 58 here. I have total of 58, right? Story points. Now, how many iterations do I need to have? I really don't know, but that depends on your team velocity. Say the team velocity is 15 points, 15 story points. But how am I getting these 15 points here? Either you look into the historical information of your project or similar kind of project and try to take 15. That's one way of doing that. Another way of dealing is that you do a dry run. You test with iteration 0. That is not iteration. You're experimenting something. And you take the velocity of this iteration 0 and you benchmark your progress against that. So initially, when you want to come up with team velocity, when you have not even started your project, you look into your historical information, or you can also do an IO, initial iteration. It is a dry run basically. Say you have done the dry run and you have come up with this 15 points. Say each iteration duration is for 10 minutes. Just assume. Instead of 1 week, 2 weeks and all that, we have taken 10 minutes, right? Number of iterations that you want to have is total story points divided by the team velocity. So if I can complete 15 points within one iteration, if I can complete 15 points, then how many iterations do I need to complete 58? It will be 58 divided by 15. I get a count of 4. I need 4 iterations. And each iteration is for how many minutes? 10 minutes. So thereby you get the total duration of the release, which is 40 minutes, right? So this is how you calculate the duration of your iteration. Oh, sorry, release. Then we have the last thing. This is similar to your affinity diagram, right? Or theme, right? You give a theme to each and every release. So these are all the requirements, right? These are all the various requirements which we have, right? And as part of release 1, you have these requirements here. WIP means work in progress, done otherwise. And these are all the requirements that I wish to release as part of my release 2. These are all the user stories which I want to accomplish as part of my release 3. So this is called your release plan. And then you have your product roadmap. I've told you that product roadmap is a high level which is going to say what is your release deadline. This is game 1 demo, right? Right, this is your release 2, that is your release 3, release 4, and things like that. So your product roadmap is going to tell you that these are the deadlines for important events in your project. Probably the release end date, right? That is going to be important. That is going to be critical at the end of each release, because you're going to have a minimum marketable feature which you want to release in the market. These dates are important milestones for you. Then we have our release backlog. Release backlog, think about that as a subset of your product backlog. If this is your product backlog, it's a subset of your product backlog, which is release backlog, product backlog, and then you have iteration backlog, which is again iteration backlog is a subset of your release backlog. Release backlog is a subset of your product backlog, right? Release backlog is going to provide you the visibility to all stakeholders, including your team members, on what needs to be worked on the next 1 to 4 months. Normally that is a release cycle, right? I've seen a release cycle of 1 to 4 months. Sometimes it would be 1 month. Sometimes it would be for 3 months or 4 months, things like that. All right, now it's the explore phase. Here is agenda, right? Adaptive planning and all that we have already discussed. These are all the various things now. So explore phase, that's the phase which we are into. We work, we test the product, and we come up with the accepted product features. I think this is a logical time to break.